Now I want to move on to the civil rights movement that we're experiencing, which arguably is the reason for our gathering today. So protests have occurred over decades, and the founding of the Black Lives Matter movement in July 2013 renewed their focus. The most recent protests were ignited by the pandemic, which has exacerbated racial inequity and spread worldwide due to the May 25th murder of George Floyd. So my question is it different this time? And if so, how? And I just want to share some context to situate the audience. So in the aftermath of George Floyd's death, we saw a reckoning at a number of fashion and media brands, including Paper, Refinery 29, Condé Nast, and Hearst. In June, Tijane Thiam became the first Black director to join the board at Kering, which owns a number of luxury brands, including Gucci. Monroe Bergdorf joined L'Oreal's new diversity and inclusion board after calling them on their hypocrisy for posting "Speaking Out is Worth It" on Black Tuesday. So back in 2017, Monroe became L'Oreal's first ever transgender spokesperson, but was fired for calling out white supremacy. Also in June, Dario Calmese became the first Black photographer to shoot the cover of Vanity Fair. And closer to home, Samira Nasser, who is from Montreal, became the first Black editor-in-chief of Harper's Bazaar in its 153-year history. So this is all encouraging news, but the trickle-down effect from these high-profile hirings and firings remains to be seen. And so my question again is it different this time? And if so, how?
With the current movement happening, it's receiving a lot more momentum than there has been in the past. I do see more people joining in on the conversation, more non-Black voices, colleagues, acquaintances. So I have seen that personally from my lens. My hope though is like what I'm seeing on social is that trickling to homes. Like, are those, awkward, hard conversations happening among people and their friends and their family? I don't know. And in terms of the content I'm seeing at media outlets, I really hone in on the Canadian titles. Like, I do see more content being produced by Black voices, by BIPOC voices. However, my thinking is like, I just feel like currently what I'm seeing is really reactive to what's happening. And the trickle down effects is going to be long term. Like, I want to see this come January, February, this time next year. That will be the true test for me. Like, as much as people personally are checking in with themselves currently and being like, am I a part of the problem? Like, what can I do to help? I hope media outlets specifically and the teams are checking themselves, checking the content they've created in the past and being like, how have we failed people? Like, how can we bake in important storytelling into the everyday, to the weekly that we do? I'm really tired of the cyclical trend up. And then, when things simmer down, you just don't see anything anymore. So that's my hope. Like, again, I've seen a shift, but I don't know if it's going to be long lasting.
Kaepernick took a knee a few years ago, and it had some meaning. It resonated with some of us, but he lost his job. He was disenfranchised, disowned, and nobody really stood with him. I mean, we were mindful of what was happening, but it didn't have the same weight as it does now. So why is that? I think 8 minutes and 46 seconds is why. And we had to watch it. We had to watch it. Honestly, the first time I saw it, I looked away and I couldn't believe I was actually watching this. And I looked away, and then I actually forced myself to see it, because I think it's important that we all know that this actually happened for no reason. It's interesting. I'm going to share a story with you. I was seeing my osteopath, whatever, and she's white, and she was doing a treatment on me, and this subject came up, as it does everywhere. And she said, I can't talk about this with you. And I'm like, excuse me? When I talk to my other Black friends, I am pushed away. I don't understand. I'm white, so it's not my experience. And I went, for me, this is part of the problem, is that there are going to be conversations that are going to be had outside of this sphere. Okay, they're going to be had amongst white people, and I need her to have a voice for us in those arenas, because we're not going to be there. We're not going to be privy to that. I think the shift is that we need everyone to be on board and everyone to keep messaging and keep speaking about what's happened here. And for me, yes, I see it as a huge shift. The momentum is the tricky part, Natasha. You know, is how do we keep it going and keep it going and keep it going? And I think this forum, talking to my Caucasian friends about it, and saying, no, let's talk about it. You know what I mean? Let's have this discussion, you know, and to keep drawing them closer to us and not pushing them away because of our own bias too.
Anyone feel like we're popular now? Suddenly? I mean, it's funny. It takes like 8 minutes and 46 seconds. It takes someone to die to suddenly, like, I'm walking down Queen Street and I see like a 65-year-old white man, and he's like nodding at me, like giving me, I'm like, okay, we're popular all of a sudden. And it's like, we've always been feared, right? But suddenly now we're feared and loved. You're walking down the street and you have people coming down and then walking around you. And it's like, okay, are they giving me 6 feet because of COVID? Or are they giving me 6 feet because of my beautiful Black strength and power? Right now, all of a sudden, I'm being hired more than ever. And I'm like, I'm the same Black man, I'm the same photographer, I'm the same talent that I've always been. But all of a sudden, now I'm popular? Is this baked in? Or is this going to be like in 18 to 34 minutes, BLM and the whole movement is going to be forgotten about? Like, these are questions that we ask ourselves. For me, I know when hip hop became popular in like 2000, 2001, when Sully and Chad dropped the magazine, like I shot the first cover, like he was hiring people who looked like him. He was no fool like 15 years ago. So us people on the Len Henry, Richard Campbell sending me models, Celia said, like Sabah, we've all been doing things and all been supporting each other. It's Black Lives Matter and Black business. And suddenly now we popular. And how long is that going to last? Celia is living in Milan. What's racism like in Milan for her? What's it like in Italy, where every third person is an invisible minority, where you are literally, I know, yes, there's Black Italian soccer players and blah, 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 and I've spent time in Italy. I spent 3 weeks there. I'm hoping it's a long-lasting shift, but as 500 years of history has taught us, it never really ended up working out like that. So that's my point.
To prepare for this, when I spoke to some of the elders, you know, I said, gosh, surely the world must have been outraged when Nelson Mandela was in prison. Surely they were outraged when, what is so different about George Floyd? Why is this happening now? And we said it's amplification, right? News gets out further, more people have access to it. So that is different. But we also identified that scale for scale, back then, now, amplification. What really is different? Is it different? Is the mess, are we getting any further? I don't know. You know, I really and truly don't know. Like Natasha said, yes, PR people have been reaching out to me. What can we do? We never knew what the problem. And you're right, Richard, we must engage them because, and I'm going to use this word again, I think this is my second time, decolonialization. We must decolonialize our minds, and that is both Black and white, and it runs deep. What feels good to me is that I hear words like BIPOC, which means that we are now not just standing for Black people, but Indigenous and people of color. That feels different, that there is more connection. I'm working on a project that is trying to document and archive the achievements of the Black creatives. And I'll tell you, the first group that reached out to me were the Indigenous groups. 2 Indigenous groups reached out and said, can we be a part of it? I said, of course, we're fighting the same struggle. That feels hopeful to me. And younger people getting involved. I see now my role is to keep that movement going. You're going to go through it just like we have, right? And what we keep pushing, we keep going on and on.
The first time BLM really made a mark in Toronto, a group of people decided to ambush the Gay Pride Parade and sat in at College and Yonge. Their demands were that they wanted more Black representation in the sort of administration of Pride, and more acceptance for LGBTQ people. You know, Black LGBTQ people have a problem because, number one, family, community, country repels you. And so there is no home there. And when you reach out to a mainstream community and there's no home there, now you have no home. So those people at BLM Toronto really was just asking for a home. That's all it is. They also didn't want police floats, and they were successful back and forth in making that happen. So there are no floats from the police because police are aggressive. And they managed to hire a Black executive director who put their books back on track, and now she has disappeared suspiciously. Nobody knows why she left the company, why she left the place. But at least some things did happen and some attention was drawn. There was huge pushback from the mainstream gay community. So it showed that even though in Black community you have no home, but also in the world you have no home. So they were founded in their point, but they were seen as aggressive, problematic, causing this disruption. I think in 2020, on the other hand, we have the Gen Zs to really thank for what's going on here. I think that these kids, the youth, want to approach life very differently. Community and taking care of home and taking care of each other and working together. The profile that, you know, that the Gen Zers are giving us worldwide, they've got the internet to share this information, and everybody has come on board. So we've seen a bigger outcome. And now we see that the brands and marketers are responding because they know what their market is going to be. Without the Gen Z, who's going to be their buyers, they're going to be out of business. And so it's that young generation, Black and white, are Gen Zs. It's not, you know, white kids or Black kids. It's the next generation that is making the demands. And, you know, every young generation makes a mark, but I think this young generation has a lot of tools that can make some serious change.
Continuing on what everybody has said, you know, it's really, you can't really judge that until you look at it, you know, next year, 5 years, 10 years. But I will say I have been working on this kind of stuff in the fashion industry since the 90s. Beth Ann Hardison had this group in the mid 90s, early 90s called the Black Girls Coalition. It was a group of Black models, you know, all of us, everyone from Naomi to Karen Alexander to Veronica Webb, Kara Young, on and on. Rashomba, you know, Beverly Johnson, Iman was also involved, you know, and that was a time in fashion when the waif came in, that heroin chic look came in, you know, and everything got completely whitewashed, you know, and designers would do these shows and it would just be like void of any color in the model, you know, the models that they showed. You go to a casting, oh, we're not booking any Black models. That's a whole other story. That's something they've been saying forever, but whatever. So we had this group and we did all these initiatives to create change, create awareness, to try and, you know, advocate for diversity within the industry. And sure, you know, people did something maybe the next season or maybe for 2 seasons, you know, changed this, it changed that. We had a lot of panels, we did some events. It didn't make long-term change. It made no long-term change whatsoever. I think the difference now, the reason why it has changed is because of the, you know, the catalyst of George Floyd's death. The difference now is that it has become an international movement. I mean, you're seeing it in every country in the world. That didn't really happen before. So I'm hopeful that because it is so global, it's not just New York, it's not just Toronto, it's not just you know, Los Angeles, places that have like big Black populations, or England or something, you know, it's all of these countries all over the world where Black, you know, there's really not a lot of Black people living there. And so I'm hopeful that this can create more lasting change than what has happened before, that, you know, that, yeah, I mean, you can only be hopeful.
Following on Lana's point about it being worldwide, you couldn't have seen it coming, and we dare not miss the moment. There's momentum that we could have never, there's no amount of marketing in the world that would have created momentum like this. And in a sense, when we see this kind of moment, we're all, I'll call it radicalized. Incremental change isn't enough. We need to see a quantum change. And when we have this suspicion that this moment could go away, we dare not let this moment pass. So in our capacity as entrepreneurs and creative people, we have to do something about it. I sometimes describe the last 25, 50 years as a bubble. We thought progress was being made, and now you see, just from the kinds of ugly things that we've seen surface, it's as if not enough progress was made. So incremental change wasn't enough. We have to make a quantum leap. And that's what I think is different this time around. We just can't let this pass.
We saw Black Lives Matters protests in Italy, in Milan, in my city, all across the world, all across Europe, in some of the most obscure places. I think it's touched everyone globally, and I think that social media has a lot to do with it. Now everything is real time, everyone is seeing everything, and I think that that has a major role to play in terms of also maintaining the momentum to keep us going and to keep the movement going. But I also believe that it has emboldened many of us to speak out, to say something, to make a point. Show Division, basically, we provide the backstage support and logistics on key shows worldwide. So the big four, New York, London, Paris, and Milan. What I have done, because I am a Black woman at the head of this company, I have taken the opportunity to reach out to the governing bodies of Milan Fashion Week, of the British Fashion Council, the CFDA, and the Chambre de Syndicat. We've started an initiative in a way to end what's happening backstage. So what I am proposing to them has to do with hair and makeup and making sure that any Black girl who goes backstage will have somebody who is proficient doing their hair, and any makeup artist who goes backstage has a full range of colors that will cover any and everyone. And these are just sort of basic inequities that are backstage, and it's just enough is enough. So far, the response has been very positive. The logistics of it is crazy, but nonetheless, the goal is, at the end of the day, any Black model who walks backstage will be treated as any white model backstage.
What makes it different? It's the accountability. For the first time in history, white Canada is owning up to systemic racism. Admitting the problem is the first step to fixing the problem. Before Blackout Tuesday, the world is fine. There's no racism here. I mean, everything is just hunky-dory. After Blackout Tuesday, for people and corporations who literally had the balls to put a Black JPEG saying that now, today, we're going to stand behind Black people. We're going to do this. We're going to hug a Black person a week, every once a week. We're going to kneel down. We're going to do all these things for Black people. They had the balls to do this. This is accountability for the first time that white Canada has never had in the history. Everybody can just do anything they wanted, tiptoe and dance all over us. As a Black man, whether angry or whatever you want to call me, by myself, that's not enough. I can't be by myself. I'm going to organize. I'm going to start something and bring as many designers that I know, more than 10, more than 20, I bet more than 50. Guess what? In 4 days of putting a call out, I got over 200 designers, narrowed it down to 130, got it to 160. Now we have designers standing with me saying, hey, you know what? It's not just a Black guy who just can't get into Hudson Bay and I'm angry. I'm in Hudson Bay. Whether you're looking for a halo, whether you're looking to atone for your sins, of all your sins, photographers, stylists, stores, independent boutiques. We've never been in your store, but we've always been in your store. The music you play, the styling on the shelf, guess where it comes from? We've been appropriated, remixed, put back on the shelf and call it something else. And all of a sudden, my brand doesn't fit your demo. I am your demo. It's always been hard for Canada to celebrate success that looks like me. So I could make all the money in the world, but I will never get that cover. I will never get that coverage. I will never get these things that's given to so many so easily. I've always been right here.
Canada is admitting more to systemic racism, but we have leaders like Doug Ford saying Canada does not have the same deep systemic racism as America. And it's just such a huge slap in the face to all people of color in Canada. Like, you can't go around saying things like this. And so I think things are having these changes here, but it's a consistent conversation that we need to have nonstop. And I think it's very important for us to use our voices and to bring a lot of things to light. It needs to be a constant conversation that is happening in order for us to see change. And they're trying to make different changes within the fashion industry. Now I see they're trying to make it more diverse, and more conversations are coming up. But for me, it's kind of hurtful to me, I feel, because it's been conversations I've been trying to have on my own as a Black woman, and my voice wasn't heard. And it's very sad to me that it took George Floyd to die for me to be able to speak about not having stylists who can do Black hair, or not having the right makeup, or not having enough representation in the industry. It's odd for me to be able to speak about that because someone else passed away because of police brutality. It's two different things, but I'm hoping that it is a consistent conversation and something that is talked about all the time, because we as Black people have to speak about it all the time, and Indigenous. So I hope it's a frequent and constant conversation that everyone is going to have, because it at the end of the day, we're all human and we all need to speak about it, because it's not fair.
So a lot of you provided examples as to why BLM is different this time. Richard, you mentioned sports, and Colin Kaepernick. Len, you mentioned the involvement of Generation Z. Lana and Sabah, you mentioned BLM's global reach, both on the ground and digitally through social media. But some of you also hinted at why there's still so much further to go. So George, as you mentioned, here in Canada, we're only at step one, which is finally admitting we have a problem. Charmaine, you mentioned that in media, it's advertisers who are going to drive the biggest change in our industry. And actually that reminded me of the La Roche and Zendaya cover, totally spectacular, and the editorial for InStyle's September issue that was released last week. And from what I understand, they were given carte blanche by editor-in-chief Laura Brown, no interference from advertisers, which is amazing. But if all of you have said, we're going to be watching upcoming issues really closely to make sure this isn't a one-off, that come October, advertisers aren't back to dictating terms of engagement.